everyone, Sabrina here from Scrappy Tales Crafts, and today I'll be showing you the last 5 cards that I created with the September 2019 Hero Arts card kit. So for card 6, I'm going to take the black wood grain paper that came in the kit and the fancy die, and I'm going to die cut just a portion of this die from this paper. I didn't want to create an entire background, I want to make a small little shadow box. So I found an area of the die that cuts out a larger rectangle, so that is the area I chose to die cut. I also wanted some triangles. I don't have any triangles in my stash, so I'm going to take some stitch square dies and just die cut half of it from the same wood grain paper and a larger one from black cardstock. I'm also going to die cut the Happy Halloween word die that came in the kit from some silver foil cardstock and then a few bats from my stash. And like I said, I wanted to create a shadow box for this card, so I'm going to die cut the same area of the die from some black fun foam. I actually die cut that twice because I really wanted it to look like a dimensional shadow box. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking my scissors and I'm going to snip off those flaps, so I'm left with just the outline of this die. Okay, so now I'm going to take some white cardstock and I'm going to create the elements inside the shadow box using the Halloween icons that came in the kit. I'm just laying them out and trying to figure out an arrangement that I like here. I think there were just enough Halloween icons to fill this entire little rectangle here. So I use the spider web, the skulls, the key, one of the flowers inside a, what are they called? A test tube, and then some of the spider webs, and I included the mushroom too. So I'm going to place that in my MISTI so that I can stamp all of these icons out at once. And I am going to ink them up with my Memento Tuxedo black ink. This is an alcohol-friendly ink. I don't use a whole lot of coloring, but you can see that I do add just a little bit of color to each of these icons. I made my spider a black widow, so I added some red to him, and then I'm just going to add a little bit of gray to my skulls. For this test tube, I actually colored it blue this time, but I will end up covering it with some brown ink later. Going to color in my key and then my little mushroom. And I felt that it was too white and I wanted this to look like an old shadow box, so I'm going to take my Vintage Sepia VersaFine ink and an ink dauber, and I'm just going to go around the edges and add a little bit of brown. And Vintage Photo Distress ink is another great ink that you can use instead of the Vintage Sepia. So of course I'm going to add acetate behind this rectangle. I'm attaching that with my 3-in-1 glue. And now I'm going to add the fun foam behind. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to snip off those little rectangles, add some more 3-in-1, and attach that to the back of my wood grain panel. And like I said earlier, I wanted 2 layers of fun foam, so I'm going to add another layer here. So it's very dimensional. Fun foam is a little bit thicker than foam tape, so I would say this is probably 1/4 of an inch thick. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to add some more 3-in-1 and attach that to my white panel. And I really think that this looks like a shadow box with all of that dimension. So I'm just going to trim off the excess with my scissors. And here you can see what I'm doing with those triangles. I'm creating a roof. So I'm creating a shadow box house. I'm going to take the smaller wood grain triangle, add some fun foam behind that, and pop it onto the larger black triangle. I only used 1 layer of foam, so it is a little bit less dimensional than the shadow box. Okay, so I love how that looks. I felt the roof was a little plain, so I thought adding the Happy Halloween silver foil die cut would finish this little house perfectly. So I'm just going to attach that with my art glitter glue. And I love the way that that looks. I know I say this for every card, but this one is one of my favorites. All the Halloween ones I made are my favorites. I just love the holiday. I love that this kit is more on the spooky side as opposed to whimsical. So I got really creative with this kit. And it doesn't happen very often, but I'm happy with pretty much every card I made. Usually there's one or two where I don't really care for them, but for all of these I really like them. So just to finish this card, I'm going to add my die cut bats. These are by Sherry Lynn. All of the extra supplies will be listed in my coordinating blog post. And that will complete card number 6. Here's a close-up. Okay, for card 7, I die cut the fancy die from some white cardstock, and I'm going to use my scissors to trim out the flaps just so that I get the outline. And I would keep those little rectangles that you cut out. They're perfect for sentiments. So I'm going to add just a little bit of tape behind this so that I can stamp my icons inside the paper underneath. That paper is cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And it's another sheet of white Neenah cardstock. So I die cut that fancy die from some glitter cardstock and 2 pattern papers I had in my stash. This is a similar card to card 1, but it doesn't have any flaps, and it's more of a shabby chic theme rather than a nautical theme. So I chose the butterflies, the plants, and the seashells to stamp inside a few of these windows. So I'm just laying them out, and then once I figured out my layout, I will place this whole panel inside my MISTI to stamp all of these images out at once. I am inking them up with my Versamark ink, and I'm going to emboss these with some silver embossing powder by Recollections. I noticed that I used a lot of embossing powder for my cards, but I think that it looks really nice with these small images. So now I'm taking a dry paintbrush to wipe away the excess embossing powder, and then I'll take my heat tool and heat set everything. And I will color in these icons a little bit later with my Copic markers, but first I want to finish the background. So just like I did with card 1, I'm going to place some pattern paper rectangles behind some of the windows. Right now I'm going to start with the silver glitter cardstock, and I'm really happy that I included the glitter paper because it adds an interesting texture to the background, and of course it's really pretty. So I use the glitter cardstock underneath a lot of my windows. And just like I did with card 1, I'm going to snip out some of the pattern paper rectangles and place them underneath the same window underneath this white panel. I used a light pink striped cardstock and a cardstock that came in a Simon kit. I'm also going to add a few turquoise rectangles, and that is because I'm going to die cut my treasure word die from turquoise paper, and I'm also going to add a turquoise frame around this whole window panel. So I'm just going to finish up these last few windows here. And then I'm going to start coloring in my icons. So I took a few Copic markers. I think I only used 2 or 3 markers for each image. However, these are really tiny, so 1 marker would be fine too. Whenever I color with my Copics, I always start with my darkest marker, and then I go over it with my mid-tone, and then I go over the entire image with my lightest marker. So I will leave in the coloring for this card, but for the rest of my cards, I'm just going to do it off camera, since I do color all of the images the same way for my other cards. I decided to go for more pastel colors, so I chose a coral pink color for the coral and the seashells. And then for that little butterfly, I'm going to color it in an orange, peachy tone. And for the crystals, I'm just going to add a little bit of BG00 to the bottoms of them and let that fade out to white. Okay, so my coloring is finished. I'm going to assemble the card now. So I'm going to take this turquoise frame. I created this frame by die cutting the fancy die from some turquoise paper, and then I just cut out all the windows until I was left with the frame. I'm going to attach this onto my white panel. Alright, so now I'm going to work on my sentiment. I die cut a heart from some vellum cardstock. Right now I'm going to stamp out another butterfly. I will silver heat emboss it and color and fussy cut it off camera. And now I'm going to silver heat emboss the sentiment. I did stamp URA onto the left portion of the heart. And this sentiment is from the You Are a Keeper sentiment that came in the stamp set. I only inked up the portion that says URA, and I will be adding the treasure word die underneath so that the sentiment reads You Are a Treasure. And making sure that my heat tool is good and hot before I add it to the vellum, since vellum can warp very badly. I'm going to attach this treasure die with my art glitter glue. I did die cut this die from the same turquoise cardstock that is around the frame. And I love using vellum just to mute down the pattern papers in the background without completely covering them. I did attach the butterfly next to the sentiment. I did bend his wings up just a little bit to add some dimension. And of course, I'm going to add some acetate behind this panel, so I will attach that with my art glitter glue and trim off the excess with my scissors. And surprisingly, I did not add any foam tape behind this. I thought it looked really cool flat against that glittery cardstock underneath. It just adds a really pretty shine. And it's kind of cool that the glitter paper looks like you can touch it and it looks textured, but the acetate makes it smooth. I can't really explain, but it's just very interesting. So now I'm going to attach my vellum heart. I'm just adding glue behind the areas where the butterfly is and the treasure die cut, and that is because you can see the glue underneath the vellum, so I'm trying to avoid adding glue in those areas. So now I'm going to attach this panel onto an A2 card base, and that will complete card number 7. I really like this card. I love the colors, and it kind of looks shabby chic and girly, and definitely different than any of the other cards that I have made so far. So here's a close-up. Okay, card 8 is another Halloween card, so I went ahead and die cut the fancy die from some black cardstock, and now I'm taking my scissors and I'm going to cut out a whole bunch of these smaller rectangles in order to create larger ones, if that makes sense. I think it's easier for you to see what I'm doing than for me to try to explain it, but I'm basically just cutting portions of this die to create larger rectangular windows, and you can cut this die however way you'd like to create different sizes and well, not shapes, they're all going to be rectangular, but you can have them be however size you'd like, I guess. So here I decided to go with 5 rectangles. And I was so happy when I figured this out. I experimented with this die a lot to try to stretch its use, and I definitely feel like this is a die I will be using a lot, especially for this reason. I thought it would be cool to create a shaker card and have different shaker bits in each of the different rectangles. So in order to do that, I'm going to use a pencil and trace each rectangle onto this 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch white Neenah panel, and that is because I wanted to color each rectangle in with different Distress Oxide inks. So for this largest rectangle, I'm going to color it in with my Seedless Preserves and Salty Ocean. I am using my Life Changing brushes here to add the color. I am using copy paper to mask out each of my rectangles to make sure that I don't get any ink where I don't want it to be. So here I'm just adding the Salty Ocean to create more of that bluey purple color. So now I'm going to work on the skinny rectangle on the side here. So I'm going to use a new area of my copy paper, tape that down with some Scotch tape, and add some Lucky Clover Distress Oxide ink to the bottom of it. And then the top of the rectangle, I'll add some Twisted Citron. I obviously chose Halloween colors for this card, and this one is my favorite out of the 10 that I created. It just turned out so vibrant and fun. So for this skinny rectangle, I'm going to do it in green as well, just using the same colors, Lucky Clover and Twisted Citron. So this middle rectangle, I'm going to have to add a whole bunch of sheets of copy paper. You could use masking tape instead. So this is when I realized that I have to mask out all 4 sides. So I think the ink blending took about 20 minutes to do, so it's not that bad. So for this middle rectangle, I inked it up with Wild Honey, and then on the bottom I'm adding Candied Apple. So that's going to be my orange rectangle. This last one at the bottom is going to be yellow. So I'm going to ink up the bottom with the Wild Honey, and then the top I will use Squeezed Lemonade. Okay, so those are all my rectangles. I'm going to take my black frame and place that over these rectangles after I add some water splatters. So here's how that looks. I love black against bright colors. It just really helps the colors to stand out. So now I'm going to add some acetate behind this black rectangular window frame. And off to the side there, you can see I colored a whole bunch of the icons that came in the stamp set. I colored them based on the colors on the cards. So I have some purple skulls, and I'm going to put them in the purple section. Also, the keys are color coordinated, and the spiders. So I am using some sequins that I got at the Scrapbook Expo. I'm not sure where I got them from. If I can find them, I will link them down below. But they come in these packs that have basically one color. And within each pack, there's just a whole bunch of shades of that color. There's iridescent sequins, metallic ones. I really like these packs. If I can find them, like I said, I'll try to link them down below. For this orange rectangle, I'm going to use this fall pack. I'm going to use the matte orange and the metallic. And then I'll just add those icons on top. I try not to add too many because I didn't want them to get stuck. However, some of them do get stuck, and I actually like how that looks, so I'll just finish up this yellow section. And off camera, I added 2 layers of foam tape behind that black frame. I made sure to add foam tape in between each of the rectangles. That way, the sequins are divided into their designated color areas. And surprisingly, it was easier to place this frame on top of the sequin panel than I thought it would be. I just used my scissors to make sure that none of the sequins were trying to escape. And here you can see the completed shaker. I love how that turned out. I think the reason I like it so much is because I packed it full of sequins, and they're just super shiny and eye-catching. So here is the completed shaker. I absolutely love how that turned out. And on top of each of the rectangles, I wanted to add some die cuts. So on this large purple one, I'm going to attach the sentiment. I die cut the Happy Halloween word die from some silver glitter cardstock and black cardstock. And I'm going to layer the silver glitter on top of the black, slightly offsetting it to create a two-tone sentiment. I'll just attach that using my art glitter glue. And then for the other rectangles, I'm going to add some bats and some spiders. And I think the addition of these die cuts really finishes the card nicely. And I just love die cut cards. I, of course, love stamping, but I think die cut cards really look clean. And I don't know. To me, this looks like an expensive card. I'm just very happy with how this looks. So I attached everything with my art glitter glue. I'm going to flip this panel over, add some ATG tape, and attach it to my 110-pound white Neenah card base. And that will complete card number 8. This one, like I said, is my favorite. I just love the colors and those sparkly, shiny sequins. Okay, I promise card 9 is much more simple than my last 3 cards. I went ahead and die cut this stitch circle frame from 2 stitch circle dies I had in my stash, and I also cut 2 small strips of the same green cardstock, and I'm trying to create those modern circular shelves that I see everywhere right now. And I thought it would be cool to stamp out some of the plants that came in the stamp set. So I'm just laying them out in my MISTI so that I can stamp all of them out at once. I'm shifting my shelves down so that I can use this test tube here with the flower. Okay, so I like how that looks. I'll remove everything, ink all of those icons up with my Memento Tuxedo black ink, and stamp that out. Off camera, I went ahead and colored in all those images with my Copic markers, and now I'm going to attach my shelves with my art glitter glue. And the shelves in the circular frame were cut from some green shimmer cardstock that came in the December 2018 card kit. I really thought this bright green worked well with the plants that came in the stamp set. And I'm going to use these 2 butterflies, which I colored and fussy cut out off camera. Here they are. So now I'm going to work on the sentiment. I chose "I treasure our friendship," and I'm going to white heat emboss it onto this black rectangle, which I actually used from the last card where I used my scissors to trim out all those little rectangles. I kept those, and like I said earlier, I would keep them because they work very nicely with the sentiments that coordinate in the stamp set. And I wanted to add some foam tape behind the circular frame, and I did add acetate, of course, behind this circle. So I'm just going to use 1 layer of foam tape. I won't be making a shaker this time. And then I'll just add that over my shelves, and then using my scissors, I'll trim around and trim off the excess. So now I'm going to take my butterflies and my sentiments and arrange them. I did bend the wings upwards to give them some dimension. So I like how that looks. I'm going to add art glitter glue to the butterfly bodies and also to the sentiment. And then I'm going to attach this circle onto my A2 white card base, and I thought it was too plain. So I'm going to use the bees that came in the metal embellishments in the kit, and also some clear droplets, and going in a diagonal from right to left, or I guess left to the bottom right, I'm going to add those bees, and I think that finished the card off nicely. So that will complete card number 9. Much more simple than my last few cards, but I do think it's really pretty. Okay, for my final card, the only supply I had not used from the kit was this bronze shimmer ink that came in a nail polish bottle, and I wanted to challenge myself to use every supply, so I'm going to use this ink for card 10. I took the brown wood grain embossed paper and cut that down to a strip, and now I'm going to apply that ink all over this strip. And when you apply the ink, it's actually a brown color, but once it dries, it's a really pretty bronze. And once I turn my light on, you can see how shimmery that is. And the look that I'm going for is a table. So I think the addition of that ink makes it look old. And I like how that looks. So I went ahead, and this is very similar to my second card in part 1. I'm going to use the same Tim Holtz Sizzix dies to cut out a whole bunch of potion bottles and this crystal ball and some other die cuts, a spider web. I went ahead inside the crystal ball, I stamped out the moth and colored it in with some brown markers. I also colored and fussy cut some of the test tubes with the flowers inside of them. I colored them in brown to make them look old. And now I'm going to pop up my table with some foam tape. And for the card panel, I took some white Neenah cardstock and just added some vintage sepia around the edges to make it look old. So now I'm going to arrange my die cuts and my icons. Very similar to card 2, I added the raven on top of the crystal ball and the skull head on top of the book. I decided to add this spider web up on the corner here. And then for my potion bottles, I'm going to add a few of the icons as well. So for this gray panel, I'll add this bird skull. For the lids, I'll just color them in with my brown Copic marker. For this orange potion bottle, I glued another skull. And here you can see I laid out some of those test tubes with the flowers inside. I'm going to pop up some of the elements on this table here, and then others I'll just glue straight down with my art glitter glue. I did also add a candle next to the crystal ball. For the flame, I'm going to color that in with my orange and yellow Copic markers. And then I wanted one more potion bottle with the beetle inside of it. I originally thought I would have it standing up, but I thought it would fill in the space better if I had it laying down. Going to add foam tape behind the crystal ball. And I love how that looks. To me, this card screams Edgar Allan Poe. I think it's because of the raven. But I like the vintage colors on this card. So now I'm gluing down the sentiment. I stamped out Happy from the Happy Halloween stamp that came in the stamp set onto the same little rectangles that I cut out earlier. I did white heat emboss that. Then I glued Halloween, which is the word die that came in the kit. I did cut that from the brown shimmer cardstock that came in the kit. And now, just to use up all the supplies, I decided to attach the metal keys that came in the embellishment pack. And I just scattered those all around the card. I'm going to flip the panel over, add some ATG tape, and attach it to this brown shimmer cardstock that came in the kit. That is cut to 4 by 5 and, no, sorry, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So that will completely cover my card base. And that will complete card number 10. Here's a close-up. Okay, so now I'm going to show you all 10 cards that I created in part 1 and part 2 using the September 2019 Hero Arts card kit. As I mentioned before, this kit is definitely one of my most favorites that Hero has released so far. I love how many ways you can use that fancy die that came in the kit to create many different types of shakers, window dies, obviously the fun flap treasure themed cards, and any cards for any occasion and holiday. I will definitely be getting a lot of use for that fancy die. And of course, I love the Halloween theme. There are some kits still available, and if you want to snag one, I ask that you use my affiliate link down below if I have sparked any inspiration for you guys. That will help out my channel, and I would greatly appreciate it. If you want to know exact measurements or more information on a specific card, you can check out my coordinating blog post. Let me know which card was your favorite, and thank you guys so much for watching this very long video. Thanks for sticking it out, and I'll see you next time. Bye!